I'm going to talk briefly about calcium regulation and primary hyperparathyroidism. Calcium is an essential circulating element, and we have a huge store of it in bone. In fact, 99% of the calcium is stored in bone, and a tiny amount, 1%, is circulating in your bloodstream. Now, it's important that the concentration in the blood is fixed, and it's regulated because nerves, and in particular the brain, can't work normally without a normal plasma calcium. So we've evolved clever mechanisms to make sure that the amount of calcium in your blood stays the same. So it's very important that we maintain a constant concentration of dissolved calcium in the blood. Calcium can be absorbed in the gut, and it can be excreted in the kidneys, and of course the bone is a huge store. So when calcium levels are low, we have evolved a very important and clever system that will temporarily sacrifice a bit of bone in order to keep the concentration in the blood constant. So this shows the whole of calcium metabolism on one slide, and it's not complicated. Just to keep it simple, this pink thing in the middle here represents the bloodstream. On the left hand side you can see the gut. At the top here you can see the parathyroid glands, and on the right hand side you can see the kidney. At the bottom is an example of a bone with its bone forming cells, osteoblasts, and bone eating cells, the osteoclasts. Now, supposing for whatever reason your plasma calcium starts to fall because you haven't got enough in your diet, you will then have a low plasma calcium, and that's detected by the parathyroid glands that will be stimulated to release the hormone PTH. And the PTH levels will rise, and they'll go to your osteoclasts and activate them, and the activated osteoclasts will release plasma calcium into the blood and increase it back to normal. So a tiny bit of bone will be sacrificed here to normalize the plasma calcium. In addition to that, the PTH will also activate calcium absorption from the gut, and it will also activate calcium resorption from the tubules after it's been filtered in the kidney. So there's lots of clever ways to normalize the plasma calcium, and in times of plenty, when you have enough calcium in your diet, the calcium will go back into bone under the influence of the bone building cells, the osteoblasts. Now, supposing you have a parathyroid tumor up here, okay, that will release PTH all the time, and that long-standing PTH release will for a long time activate the osteoclasts all the time. And so if you have an overactive osteoclasts in all your bones all the time, you will end up with extra calcium in your circulation. So you'll have, if you measure it, a high plasma calcium. Now the problem is that this osteoclasts will continue to cause bone loss, and eventually you will get osteoporosis after some years of primary hyperparathyroidism. The other problem is that the very high calcium will exceed the renal threshold, and you'll therefore not be able to resorb enough calcium. There'll be lots of calcium in the urine, and of course, because calcium is a source of stones, you'll end up with kidney stones as well as osteoporosis. So in a patient with primary hyperparathyroidism, you have a number of problems, but in particular you get fractures of your bone and kidney stones, and the high calcium can have effects on your brain and make you depressed. In this short video we've talked about calcium regulation, and I've shown you how a tumor of the parathyroid gland causes primary hyperparathyroidism and its consequences of stones, fractures and depression.